Imagine $1 billion vanishing overnight. No armed robbers, no surveillance footage, no getaway cars speeding through city streets. Just invisible computer commands silently traveling across the internet, slipping through firewalls and draining accounts before anyone realized what was happening. Banks lost fortunes, governments scrambled for answers, Hollywood studios watched their most guarded secrets spill across the internet. Cryptocurrency exchanges collapsed overnight. Hospitals found their systems held hostage, all connected by a single name whispered inside cybersecurity agencies and intelligence offices around the world. The Lazarus Group? Who are they? How did a shadowy collection of hackers become one of the most feared cyber organizations ever investigated? And does every trail of digital evidence lead back to one of the most secretive governments on the planet? That is exactly what we are going to uncover today. Welcome to Mysterious Crime. The investigation starts now. For most of human history, war had a shape. Soldiers marched across borders, ships clashed on open water, missiles left trails across the sky. You could see conflict coming, but somewhere in the late 20th century the battlefield quietly shifted. It moved into the wires, the servers, the invisible highways of the internet. And suddenly every bank, every hospital, every airport, every government agency became a potential target. Not because of where they were located, but simply because they were connected. By the early 2000s, cybersecurity researchers began noticing something unsettling. A growing number of sophisticated attacks were appearing worldwide, and they shared similar digital fingerprints. These were not clumsy intrusions, they were careful, patient, well-funded, and disciplined. Investigators started asking a question that would take years to answer. Were these the work of criminals, independent hackers operating alone, or something far more organized? Could an entire government be waging war from behind a keyboard? As investigators pieced together the growing pattern of attacks, they needed a name to describe what they were tracking. The label Lazarus Group was not chosen by the hackers themselves. It was adopted by cybersecurity researchers studying coordinated attack campaigns that kept reappearing across different targets and different years. Different companies assigned overlapping names to what appeared to be the same operation. Some called them Hidden Cobra. Others used Advanced Persistent Threat 38 or Blue Noroff. The terminology varied depending on which research team was writing the report. Despite those differences, investigators kept finding the same consistent malware signatures, the same server infrastructure, and the same tactical approaches connecting these operations together. The name Lazarus Group gradually became the most widely recognized label in the cybersecurity community. Yet even as the name spread across intelligence briefings and research papers worldwide, the enormous question of who was truly behind these operations remained completely unanswered. The first major warning arrived in 2009. Large-scale distributed denial-of-service attacks swept across the United States and South Korea simultaneously, hammering government agencies, banks, media organizations, and critical infrastructure with overwhelming waves of internet traffic. Websites crashed, systems went dark. The scale was unlike anything seen before. Attribution in cyberspace remained extremely difficult at the time. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, no physical evidence to collect. Cybersecurity firms began the slow, painstaking work of collecting digital clues, comparing malware samples, server infrastructure, and programming techniques across multiple incidents. Gradually, patterns began emerging. The attacks shared consistent characteristics that separated them from ordinary criminal hacking. The coordination was too precise. The resources were too significant. The patience was too deliberate. Investigators started reaching an uncomfortable conclusion. These were not random hackers operating from basements. Something far more organized, well-funded, and strategically focused was quietly preparing for something considerably larger on the horizon. Everything changed in November 2014. Employees arriving at Sony Pictures Entertainment found deeply disturbing messages displayed across their computer screens. This was no ordinary technical glitch. Massive quantities of confidential data had been stolen, including internal executive emails, sensitive financial records, personal employee information, and several unreleased films. The damage was staggering and deeply personal. As investigators dug deeper, attention turned toward one specific project. Sony was preparing to release The Interview, a satirical comedy depicting a fictional assassination plot involving North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The connection seemed impossible to ignore. United States authorities eventually made a remarkable public announcement, attributing the attack to actors associated with North Korea. This was not a criminal gang targeting credit card numbers. This was a nation-state striking back against a Hollywood movie. Suddenly, cyber warfare was no longer an abstract government concern. It had arrived directly inside one of America's most recognizable entertainment companies. The Federal Bureau of Investigation launched a sweeping multi-agency response, bringing together digital forensic experts to examine every layer of the attack. Specialists analyzed malware code, network infrastructure, programming techniques, and communication patterns left behind inside Sony's compromised systems. After months of careful analysis, investigators concluded the attack carried characteristics consistent with previous operations attributed to North Korean cyber actors. The same digital fingerprints kept appearing, connecting this breach to a pattern investigators had been quietly tracking for years. But the consequences stretched far beyond financial damage. Unreleased films were delayed, private executive communications were exposed publicly, corporate operations were thrown into chaos, and confidence in digital security suffered a serious blow across the entire entertainment industry. Most significantly, investigators faced an uncomfortable realization. If one of Hollywood's most powerful studios could be completely penetrated, then no organization, regardless of size or resources, could consider itself truly safe from an invisible digital threat. With the Sony Pictures attack exposing just how vulnerable major institutions truly were, investigators barely had time to process the implications before something far more ambitious was already in motion. Around 2015, the objective of the Lazarus Group appeared to shift dramatically, moving from stealing information to stealing actual money. The Bangladesh Bank, founded in 1971, was one of the country's most important financial institutions. Like many central banks worldwide, it maintained foreign currency reserves at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, thousands of miles away in the United States. A digital map connecting Dhaka, Bangladesh, to New York City tells the story of what came next. Investigators believe the hackers spent months quietly studying the bank's internal systems. They installed malware designed specifically for patients, carefully watching employee routines, payment procedures, and security controls, all without triggering a single alarm. They were not rushing, they were preparing. To understand what happened next, you need to know about SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. It is a trusted global messaging system used by financial institutions around the world to send payment instructions to one another. Every single day, millions of financial messages travel through this network, moving enormous sums of money between countries, banks, and institutions. The system operates on trust, and that trust became the weapon. Researchers believe the attackers had studied exactly how SWIFT functioned and carefully planned to exploit the confidence placed in it. Then came the night of February 4th, 2016. While Bangladesh Bank employees had gone home and the building sat quiet, the hackers moved. Dozens of fraudulent payment requests began transmitting through the network, carefully crafted to appear legitimate. Their goal was staggering, nearly $1 billion directed toward accounts waiting in the Philippines and Sri Lanka. A single spelling mistake may have prevented one of history's greatest financial thefts. The attackers misspelled the word foundation when naming a recipient organization, writing "foundation" instead. That small error triggered additional scrutiny from routing banks, causing several transactions to be flagged and delayed through compliance checks. Most attempted transfers were ultimately stopped before reaching their destinations. However, approximately $81 million successfully reached accounts in the Philippines before authorities could intervene. That money moved with alarming speed, quickly disappearing into casinos and layered financial channels, specifically designed to make recovery extremely difficult. Investigators recovered only a fraction of the stolen funds. The Bangladesh Bank Heist sent shockwaves through the global financial community. Banks worldwide immediately began strengthening internal defenses, reviewing access controls, and auditing their systems. The Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication launched additional security initiatives, requiring stronger authentication and monitoring across member institutions. Nothing in international banking would ever feel completely secure again. The Bangladesh Bank Heist changed everything, but the Lazarus Group was already looking ahead to the next frontier. Cryptocurrency was unlike anything traditional finance had ever seen. Digital assets could cross international borders within minutes. No armored trucks, no physical vaults, no paper trails in the conventional sense. For investigators, this created an entirely new challenge. For sophisticated hackers, it represented opportunity. Researchers believe the Lazarus Group recognized fundamental weaknesses in cryptocurrency exchanges long before most businesses even understood what those weaknesses were. Between 2017 and the early 2020s, cryptocurrency exploded into mainstream finance. Bitcoin reached record-breaking prices. Hundreds of new exchanges appeared worldwide, many operating with minimal security infrastructure and limited regulatory oversight. Cybersecurity researchers began documenting increasingly sophisticated attack methods targeting these platforms. Phishing campaigns designed to steal login credentials, malware hidden inside software updates, fake job offers sent to exchange employees, fake investment platforms engineered to harvest financial access. The target had shifted from traditional banks to digital ones. In March 2022, the Ronin network, the blockchain infrastructure powering the popular online game Axie Infinity, was compromised in one of the largest cryptocurrency thefts ever recorded. Approximately $620 million in digital assets vanished in a single attack. The Federal Bureau of Investigation publicly attributed the theft to cyber actors associated with the Lazarus Group, while North Korea once again denied any involvement. What made this investigation particularly significant was how it demonstrated blockchain analysis had become one of law enforcement's most powerful tools. Every transaction on a public blockchain is permanently recorded and visible to anyone. However, investigators were quick to emphasize a critical distinction. Tracing stolen money and actually recovering it are two very different challenges entirely. The hackers increasingly relied on mixers, cross-chain bridges, and layered wallets, deliberately complicating the trail and making recovery extraordinarily difficult despite the transparent nature of blockchain technology. So who is actually behind the Lazarus Group? This is the question investigators, governments, and cybersecurity researchers have spent years trying to answer with confidence. The United States, South Korea, the United Kingdom, and several allied governments publicly concluded that multiple cyber operations were carried out by actors associated with North Korea. These were not quiet internal assessments. These were formal, public attributions made at the highest levels of government. The Federal Bureau of Investigation specifically attributed the Sony Pictures attack, the Bangladesh Bank Heist, and the Ronin network theft to Lazarus-linked actors operating on behalf of North Korean interests. North Korea has repeatedly and firmly denied any involvement in these operations. Investigators are careful to explain that attribution in cyberspace does not rest on a single smoking gun. Instead, it relies on a combination of technical evidence, gathered intelligence, observed operational patterns, and rigorous investigative methods built carefully over many years of analysis. Unlike physical crime scenes, cyber investigations leave no footprints, no fingerprints, and no witnesses. Instead, researchers hunt for something far more subtle. They examine malware code, encryption methods, server infrastructure, programming mistakes, command and control systems, operational timing, and attack techniques. Every hacker, no matter how skilled, leaves traces behind. These digital fingerprints became the foundation of attribution. Over time, dozens of seemingly unrelated attacks across different targets, countries, and years began revealing the same digital deoxyribonucleic acid. The same coding styles, the same infrastructure choices, the same operational patterns appearing again and again. That remarkable consistency became one of the strongest reasons investigators believed they were dealing with a single, highly organized cyber campaign rather than scattered independent actors. The global response was significant. Banks, governments, and companies invested billions into stronger defenses. International cooperation between intelligence agencies, cybersecurity firms, and law enforcement expanded significantly, fundamentally changing how the world approaches digital security. Looking ahead, the battlefield is evolving faster than ever. Experts warn that artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, autonomous malware, and deepfake technology may make future campaigns faster, more automated, and significantly harder to detect. Attacks that once required teams of skilled hackers could eventually be launched by sophisticated programs operating without human direction. But defensive technologies are improving alongside the threats. Artificial intelligence systems can now identify malicious activity within seconds, and blockchain monitoring tools are tracking suspicious cryptocurrency flows across complex networks in real time. The Lazarus story reveals something profound about how the world has fundamentally changed. The largest bank robbery in history may never involve masks, weapons, or getaway vehicles. The next international conflict may begin without a single soldier crossing a border. Power, money, and influence can now be seized through invisible commands traveling silently across global networks. And that changes everything we thought we understood about security. The Lazarus Group remains one of the most closely studied cyber organizations in modern history. Their operations reshaped how governments think about cybersecurity, how banks protect money, and how digital evidence is collected across international borders. Investigators answered many questions, but cyberspace rarely offers perfect certainty, and some chapters of this story remain deliberately unresolved. Billions of dollars moved invisibly. Studios were paralyzed. Banks were penetrated from thousands of kilometers away. And through it all, the architects behind these campaigns remained largely in the shadows, protected by layers of technical complexity and geopolitical silence. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is this: the greatest mysteries of the modern world are not buried in ancient ruins or hidden in remote locations. They may be traveling through the very networks you use every single day. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to Mysterious Crime for future investigations.